Ma, Rose isn't talking to me.
Enjoy it while it lasts. Now, good night.
Honey, oh, hi, Dorothy. Honey, can I talk to you?
No, go away.
But I can't sleep, Sophia, and it's all because Rose isn't talking to me.
I could care less. Now, get out of my room.
Sophia?
I'm not in. Wait for the beep, then leave a message. Beep.
Hi, this is Rose.
Rose, shut up and get in here.
I see you're with two double-crossing ex-friends of mine. I'll come back later.
What do you think this is, the 7-Eleven? I'm not open all night.
Rose, we feel terrible about what we've done.
What have you done?
We're really very sorry.
Sorry about what?
Sorry isn't good enough. How can I ever trust you again?
Trust who?
Please, Rose, let's not talk about trust after the terrible things you wrote.
Will someone please tell me what the hell you're talking about?
Blanche and I read Rose's diary.
And she wrote some terrible things about us in there.
About you? I didn't write anything about you. I didn't even know you when I kept that diary.
What are you talking about?
That was my 4-H diary. I kept it one summer when I raised 2 pigs for the county fair.
You kept a diary about raising 2 pigs.
You know another way to get a 4-H pig diary badge?
Oh, my God. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. What do you say we just forget the whole thing?
No way, I'm really mad.
If I asked you to think of a hit TV show set in Miami during the late 80s, Miami Vice would likely be the first thing that pops into your head. But lasting longer, bringing in far more awards, and featuring American treasure Betty White, I would argue the Golden Girls had an even more lasting impact on the world. A sitcom featuring 4 single older women living together and navigating their golden years together was a revelation. Their lived experiences informed how they approached every situation. This scene, featuring Estelle Getty's character, Sophia, reminds us of a simpler time in technology, when the answering machine was the peak of communication technology in the home. Clearly, communication technology has evolved a lot since then, both in our homes and in contact centers. That evolution in technology requires new skills of contact center leaders, says Ty Givens. She's experienced this evolution firsthand, and today she guides CX leaders through the challenges that come with a growing business. This week on Next in Queue, we discuss technology's impact on leadership, the importance of data literacy, B2B versus B2C customer understanding, navigating customer experience in hypergrowth companies, identifying skill gaps in leadership, strategic thinking in rapid growth mode, understanding vendor relationships and contracts, and the future of AI and human interaction. Let's get to it. Ty Givens, you are next in queue. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. I am so happy that you could join me today to have this conversation. For those that don't know you, number one, go connect with Ty on LinkedIn. You know where to find the link. It's down in the show notes. You are the founder and CEO of the CX Collective, and you help contact centers and support centers fix all the things, right?
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, that's exactly what I do.
You're gonna rewrite the description on LinkedIn today to just say fix all the things. I know that that's about to happen. So You can just put credit Rob Dwyer. He
I
said
like
you
it.
fix all the things. We actually are going to talk about fixing all the things because what has happened in contact centers over the years is that we have it's one of the things I love about this space. If you work in support, if you work in customer service in a contact center, people don't know this, but you're on the bleeding edge of technology. Like all of the things get implemented in contact centers first. And there are all kinds of amazing tools and automations and things that we used to do very manually that now we don't do very manually. And that is great. But that has changed what is required of us as leaders if we are leading in a contact center. So I want to just kind of start there and like take us back and talk about some of the things that we used to have to do manually that today, if you've got the right tech setup, is not a thing anymore.
Okay. Identifying why someone's reaching out to you. In, you know, in my day, and I won't say what day that was. It wasn't yesterday. um, you had to really think through what those things were, create your buckets, and go from there. And now we have all kinds of systems and tools that predict and recommend contact reasons for us. We even have tools that will read, if you will, the sentiment and the message and determine how that customer may be feeling based on the language and possibly move that contact to the top of the queue. So there's a lot less trying to figure it out as you go and maybe more so figuring it out before you go, which will create a better experience for the customer and you. So I think that's a good example of something that technology has taken over.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that technology is taking over certain things that we had to do in the past, what does that mean for me? Whether I am a supervisor, a frontline team leader in a contact center, or maybe that next level up, operations manager, or whatever you call it within your organization, what has changed for those people and their kind of daily business and the skills that they need to acquire?
Yeah, so I'll take it back to 2000 when I started in contact centers. And managers in that era were really people leaders, people managers. If you had a team lead, they were walking the floor with a headset so they could plug in and handle your escalation, right? You had your supervisor who was there to like coach you, maybe get you through the next couple weeks. Then your manager kind of drove the strategy and you only talk to him or her in the instance that, you may be on your third warning or whatever that is. And that was the job because from the quality perspective, somebody was handing you a report on quality assurance that went to the supervisor who had the conversation. For workforce management, someone was handing you a schedule. There was no question around when do I need to schedule people? How am I going to staff? And none of that stuff was a thing. Um, Even if you had an issue with a computer or, some sort of tech issue or a system that you were using, there was an admin there whose job was to make sure that it was functioning to the degree that you needed it. And you look at the manager of today and they don't have support from IT in most cases. If it's a smaller organization, IT doesn't even really know, or tech, whatever you guys call them, but they don't even know what tools you're using and how they're supposed to work. Some startups will have the CTO head that up, but even they don't understand the what of it. They know how it's supposed to function, but they don't understand what it's supposed to do. Then you have quality assurance where a lot, like I made this mistake. I was, bringing people off the floor to do quality. We're getting to 10% of our contacts and then, essentially judging people on a whole month or week's worth of work on 10% of the calls that they handled, which is insane. Um, but there because there's no one to handle the quality. Training is happening with team leads and supervisors. Um, and workforce management is happening with managers and supervisors who have no training in it whatsoever. So at the end of the day, in order to have all of those things, you have to understand some pieces or parts of technology. So I feel like the support leaders are becoming the new tech admins, where their job is not to really know and understand like the customer as much as it is to understand what technology can make the contact center run more smoothly and for the benefit of the customer, but it's a lot less people focused.
Yeah. I love that you brought up, IT because it used to be my machine was not just managed, but all of the applications had to be installed locally, right? And IT did that. And so you said, hey, today they might not even know what all you're running. And that's absolutely true because almost everything now is browser based. It
Yeah.
runs in the cloud. We don't have to worry about, hey, have you installed the latest version of X, Y, or Z? Because whatever you're using is typically not a local install. And so even if I have local IT, they probably aren't as involved in those applications and they're not managing them. I want to dig into your background a little bit. I mean, you got your start kind of in the workforce space. And I think that says something about your analytical nature and why you like to help people with their processes. But just from a workforce standpoint, talk about the difference in technology that is out there today. I mean, I just recently we talked to the founder of Sysney, and that is a brand new workforce technology. And we've talked to a lot of workforce leaders on this show before, but I'm wondering like what is different about how I approach workforce today, even if I'm not one of those frontline leaders, or maybe I am. What do I need to know that before was just not a thing that was ever a consideration?
That's a good question. So if we go back to my time in workforce management, I started with real-time queue management. Um, I would venture to say that there is some aspects of real-time queue management that lives today, but not in the way that it did in the 1800s when I was doing it.
Ha! Ha! Ha!
It's a little different now. My job when I first started was to watch the real-time display screen. Felt like it was a Meridian. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I remember that,
We are taking Ty back,
I'm
folks. We are
telling you, there's
taking
some
her
gray
back.
hairs around here. I would watch we used IEX Total View. So we had
Yeah.
our plan, if you will, and it was my job to ensure that we adhere to that plan and maintain service level. So this is back at Office Depot. Um, and with that setup, because Depot was the one company that I worked for that was very serious about workforce management. Our director did not play about it. If WFM said you can't do it, then you can't do it. And that's just the bottom line. We're gonna meet our goal and so be it. However, not every company is that strict when it comes to that sort of thing. So I would say like the way that real-time queue management happens today is not the same where, you have these not ready statuses or aux codes, depending on what you call them. Today, a lot of that stuff can be automated really easily for you. Whereas when I was doing it, it was a very heavily manual process. You can take someone in and out very quickly. You can write rules around those sorts of things. We didn't have that. We had me and my colleague who were managing to that. You have schedule adherence, you have real time adjustments to schedules. Whereas, we will lock our plan a month ahead. This is now I'm going into it. We'd release an intraday schedule. And then at this point, we were using EWFM. So with the intraday schedule, the supervisors could then schedule time if the plan allowed. But that plan was locked on the day of, like once let's say 10 people called out, once they called out and we're now in the negatives, they couldn't get any offline activity. So
Yeah.
I like to think that at that point we were turning everybody into workforce management people because they were saying, I need to schedule a one-on-one with so-and-so, but I can't find time. I'm like, well, if you can't find time, we can't find time. Welcome to our world, right? Like, there's no way to magically produce this. It just kind of is what it is. And I think that the tools today are just a little bit more sophisticated. But I think that what is also happening is that the products are being sold and billed as like a solution to your WFM woes. And I think there's still a lack of understanding around like the practice behind it and the philosophies behind it. Um, which I mean, I can easily tell you, like, yeah, get a system and it'll predict your workload. It'll tell you how many people you need to hire. It'll tell you when to schedule them. And it'll like, add things to the calendar that you want, breaks, lunches, all your trinkets. Okay. That sounds good and that sounds easy. Back when I was at Intuit, we had a service level. This is phones. So 3,000 years ago, service level was 100% of calls answered in 30 seconds. Okay. 100%. That means that nobody
Wow.
more than
That
30
is
seconds.
highly unusual. For
Yeah.
those that don't know, service level is a measure that we use in the industry, and it is expressed as a percent of contacts that are answered, typically when you're talking about phone, within a certain threshold, right? So it might be 80-30, which is 80% of my calls, they don't have to wait more than 30 seconds. But 100% at 30 basically means no one is ever waiting in queue. It's almost instant answer, which means you kind of have to overstaff for that. Context for those that don't know what service level is.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that to today's terms because these are, in the golden years. So we had 100% in 30 seconds. We were using EWFM. And every time I would run the analysis to identify staffing, it would tell me that I needed to add to staff by some crazy number. Right. And I remember going to talk to, I think he was our VP, and tell him, like, well, we need to hire 30 people, or I don't know what, something crazy. And he's like, but we're doing it without it. Yeah, kind of, but okay. Yeah, kind of. And so he goes, like, help me walk me through the math. Can't walk you through the math. I don't know how. So that was lesson number one of like, I love a system, but I definitely will break out a spreadsheet in a heartbeat because I can explain that number. Right. Now, when he said we're doing it today, the difference is that at the executive level, so this is fun because executives and what they want to say for, their reasons versus what's actually happening are often a little bit different. So the 130 was true in the sense that every phone call that came in, an operator answered it, but the operator would then place you into a queue. Naive 20-some-odd-year-old Ty was like, no, we're not meeting because, yeah, but technically we were. Right. So, in today's world, I think that one, phones are not so much of a thing. There's Erlang's, there's all sorts of things, but I think what's missing is like the foundation and the fundamentals of understanding, like, what are you supposed to be doing if you're a workforce management person? And also kind of coming to the realization that there are like real practices around this whole thing that you just kind of stumbled upon yesterday. The forecasting thing, there's, many different ways to do that. Estimate how much staff you need has so many different variables, but you need to figure out what works for you. How you schedule people has tons of variables. You need to figure out what works for you, and being in a space of being comfortable with saying, I don't know, I don't understand, and not being in a space of feeling like, oh, once I get this system, it's going to solve all the problems. No, someone has to run and manage that system so that you can get the outputs in order to be successful. Otherwise, garbage in, garbage out is like anything else.
Yeah, I think that's so important in today's world as we rely more and more on systems that utilize AI to do all kinds of things. And it is amazing the efficiencies that you can gain in support and in contact centers with AI enabled platforms. At the same time, being able to understand when maybe it's not actually performing very well because there is something that is not set up quite right, or it's tying into a wrong system, or I've got a setting somewhere that no longer makes sense based off of changes within the business. Being able to recognize those things and not just rely on, oh yeah, the AI's got it, is more important than ever, because there are, in fact, fewer and fewer people with eyes on all of these things, right? When you came up in workforce, like, workforce was absolutely it's this whole other thing
Yeah.
within a contact center, right?
Yeah.
You have a workforce department with people in workforce, and you have people who are managing things in real time, and you have to go ask them for permission to get somebody off the phones, right? Most contact centers probably don't function that way today. But it doesn't mean that we don't need eyes on how we're performing at a given interval. The same holds true of quality assurance, right? We are now able to very easily get 100% coverage. You mentioned like 10% is what you were doing. Like, getting 100% today is table stakes, but ensuring that it's giving you good feedback and that it's accurately assessing everything, and that if you've got multiple rubrics, that they're being applied to the right conversations, like, those are now the skills that we need to have for leaders in contact centers, is being able to recognize when things maybe are not performing as well, not necessarily the people, which is also important, but the systems that we have in place.
Yeah, it's like it goes back to the fact that there's not like I say this a lot, like no one's coming to save you. Like there's nothing that's coming to save you from having to do the work. There are tools that help move the work along. But if you don't know what you're doing, it will be exposed because you won't know where and how to correct an AI bot, where and how to correct your forecast or your capacity plan. Like it all comes out in the wash. And again, I use my example of I didn't know how to do the math behind it, but that was the last time that that happened. Now
Yeah.
I do a lot of things manually and then I compare it and I'm trying to figure out where are the differences. Now the systems can do a lot more, a lot better calculations than I can. But if we're too far off, then there's something else going on there because I need to be able to stand behind the recommendations. And at the end of the day, I'm going to go with my brain because I know how it worked. And I know that I'm pretty decent about doing these predictions over a system until that system learns. Because that's the other thing. You're putting in a bunch of old information and you're like, now tell me what I need. And you think that that's it doesn't work. It's like putting a new employee in and be like, here's all the training manuals. Now I need you to start answering, customers right away. There's a buildup. There's some time to learn some things and to adjust and then go from there. So I just think that the what we all have to remember is that at the end of the day, we have to be doing checks and balances on anything that we're putting out there. And we still have to know what it looks like for something to be good or right.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that saying the system told me so is not good enough.
I want to talk about this frontline manager, right?
Mhm.
A lot of us in the industry, myself included, started on the phones, right? We were taking phone calls, and then you get that opportunity to be a supervisor, or in my case, I went into training. And when you do that, you have to learn some new tools, right?
Mhm.
That has always been the case. You have to learn how to use some new tools. But I think today, the breadth of not just tools, but understanding data, understanding things like metadata and how that works. I never thought about metadata associated with a phone call, even when I was in training,
Yeah.
back in the day. But today, like all the systems that we use, the metadata of conversations being passed into various systems and what's available and how am I interpreting that, that all of a sudden becomes really important, doesn't it?
It does. I think like there I was thinking about this concept of the conversations that happen between, or I should say the correlation between support and success teams in B2B environments. And how even though they're working with and addressing the same customer, the way that they view that customer is very different depending on the seat that you sit in. And that's where some of those things will, like metadata, will come into play. Like I feel like support is actually the first listening tool for so many things, but in the case of success, to understand what someone is really experiencing with your product. Because success a lot of times is, their metrics are not all the time, but mostly surrounded by revenue and financial targets and goals. They see their role a lot of times as, let me jump in right before it's time to renew. Let me do my quarterly check in to see if everything's good. But other than that, you don't really hear from them. And then by the time you check in on for the quarter, you'll see that there's been, a ticket or a case, depending on your system, open for, 4 weeks. And now here you're getting ready to try to approach this person. How's it going? Right? Like there's so many different ways that we can use information and share information, flag each other, be more collaborative, and not wait until it's time for the client to spend more money to care about what they're doing. There's so many pieces of the conversation that impact, marketing and the way that they're delivering the messaging to the customer. Like there's all these pieces of information. And I feel like in today's world, we don't always lean on that. We don't always look into the customer, look at the customer holistically. Everybody is like getting a piece of that customer for their purpose and their intentions only. And I think we have to change that.
It's funny that you honed in on the B2B side of things because I think there has been this push in B2C to right know your customer and kind of know all of the things about your customer, and we've developed these tools to understand everything about our customer, their lifetime value, their sentiment. We're sending them surveys. We're measuring things in conversations that we have with them. We know like when they came to our website and what they were looking at and all of these things that we spend in a, a business to consumer, direct to consumer type of environment. And then right? There's the B2B side of things, which you were talking about, which some companies just don't do that same kind of work of truly understanding holistically the business, even though those tools all exist, right? They're still there. We just don't always use them in the same nature.
Yeah. I think it's like most of the time there are these like a lot of the systems and tools that I see out there are created by developers, not by people who really understand the process. So they're trying to get something up that they can ship as quickly as possible. And then as it ships, then they're like, oh, wait a second. Oh, wait, this isn't, oh, wait, oh, wait. Because now they want to know how people feel about it. Um, versus having something that's built by somebody who does the job every day. It's a very different type of slow burn, if you will. It takes a lot more time because they may not have access to the development resources to automate and make things go quickly. But with the the way that like SaaS companies have worked that I've partnered with, a lot of times they experience, because we work with hyper growth companies mostly, so they've experienced growth so quickly. Um, and they reach out to, a CX collective when things start to break down because then they go, wait a second, like, we're losing customers now because we have, you know, um, tickets in queue that are not getting answered, but we can't answer those tickets because we don't have our Zendesk connected to Jira. So our development team doesn't know what's going on. And then our client success team, they're actually on Salesforce. And so they see the tickets in there, but they're not coming to check in until it's time to renew. And by the time, so it's like you have these whole things, and it's like we're all talking to the same person, right? The same person. So why are we looking at it as what's in it for me instead of like looking at it from their perspective and saying, you know, this person needs to have a good experience with this product, tool, or service so that we can all continue to work here and new people can get hired. Let's go into it with that and start to build and fix from there instead of, I have this ticket that's sitting or they're trying to renew, but you guys haven't replied back to them in 2 weeks. Well, we haven't replied back to them in 2 weeks because we have 50 other tickets that we haven't gotten to yet because of that time when you guys broke the so and so. And now it doesn't work. And now we have people who are having that issue and we're trying to patch that. So I just think that as a company, any company, there has to be more of a cohesive. We're all one and we all have the same customer and we all want what's best for that customer. So let's work together to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's funny to me being at a new company to me and how we approach because we're much bigger than what I'm used to and how we approach our customers, which is really more of that kind of team effort,
Uh-huh.
right? Um, my support leader sometimes will join our regular syncs and our account management will join our regular syncs and it keeps us all kind of on the same page of understanding like where we are with a particular client of ours, what opportunities there are, and even though we're a collection of different people, we can speak with that same voice and we have an idea of what's going on. And I don't think that's all that common. It's exciting to me to hear it out of your voice because I'm like, oh yeah, well that's what we do.
Yeah.
But I do think it's hard for a hyper growth company to change the way that they approach things because when I'm really small, I can't necessarily operate that way. And then I have to make these adjustments about roles and responsibilities and tooling and how I think about my customers as I grow, which is always a challenge as well, right? I mean, it's not just the world has changed, the tools have changed, but it could be my company is changing as well. And that presents its own challenges. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I see that's really the reason why I created CX Collective. It used to be called the Workforce Pro. We've been around 10 years now, which is crazy to say. And when I started out, or when I first came up with the concept, I was in a hypergrowth startup and I was experiencing all those things. Like I did not have time to pause and think. I couldn't even think about tomorrow. I was just trying to figure out how I was going to get through the day. Like forget the rest. Like this is crazy, right? Um, and so what I wanted, and then also the other thing too is that if you're in hypergrowth mode, there's a chance that the people that you have in place may not be the people who can scale you. They are the people who are really good at doing the day to day, but like kind of pulling out of that and then looking ahead. That might not be that may not be the same group of people. That group who can get through the day to day is still extremely valuable. But when you're trying to get to an efficiency level, that might take a different skill set. And so for me, we were growing so fast. Like we went from when I started, it was we had 6 reps. I came in as the head, hired 30 people. By I'd say in 9 months, we were at 120 or 30 or something like that. It was it was really insane, right? And like during that, the belief from the C level was like, hey, just train up the front line to help you. And it's like it sounds good, right? Because if you don't live something every day, then everything sounds simple. It's just answering calls. It's just responding to emails. It's just. But at the end of the day, it's not just that. There's a whole lot that goes into it. I got to train these people. We got to do quality assurance to make sure it's right. I got to make sure I'm not over hiring or under hiring. We've got retention goals, like all these things. So I built the workforce for the time to help with that. So that when companies are going through these different periods of time and they're like, they might have the right person to execute, but not the right person to strategize,
Yeah.
or they may have neither. So during that space, when you are growing like that, um, it's going to cost you way more money to continue at that pace without fixing than it would if you just work with someone who can build the plane while it's flying. And that's
Yeah.
effectively what we end up having to do. Like, we're putting wings on the plane as it's going. Like, no, 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 keep going. We'll add a wing. We'll flap our arms for now. We'll add a wing. You know, and and it's not something that comes up all the time. It happens more often than you think, but there also has to be the ability of the leader to know I need help and to be okay with saying I need help. Because a lot of times in these roles we get promoted. Like I started out on the phones too, and you get promoted throughout. And then as you get to different levels, you start to like overwork yourself to a point of trying to prove that you can handle it, not realizing that saying, actually, I need help with this is the more mature and professional thing to do than to work yourself into a frenzy on something you don't even understand. So I think like when we work with our clients, it's always I'm trying to make sure that I'm honoring and respecting the person who's sitting in the seat. I know what it's like to be there. It doesn't mean that you're not capable. It doesn't mean that you're not smart. It doesn't mean that you couldn't do it. You don't have the time to do it. So that's where we come in.
Yeah. I'm curious. Obviously, you're working with a lot of different companies, solving different challenges.
Yeah.
But today, what's the most common skill gap that you're observing within leaders in these companies that needs to be solved? And is it something that other companies that maybe haven't hit that critical moment yet can be thinking about? How do we close this gap before it becomes crisis mode?
There's two things, strategy and technology. So from the strategy standpoint, that becomes an issue just because a lot of times the folks who are in the job today are being asked to take the company to a place that they've actually never seen before. So they don't know how to build a strategy to get to that point because they don't even know how that is, how are we supposed to operate in that realm? I don't get what that looks like. And that could be, scaling and building the team, or it could just be leveraging AI, right? It's just I don't know what I don't know. And then the other part of it is the tech side. So we kind of bridge that with the AI piece. It is not knowing which tools and products are available in the market because they have their tool stack that they're using and that's where they're focused. And that is not abnormal. I don't like I when people say I don't know what's happening right now. It's like, well, you actually have a full-time job with a tech stack that's already defined that you're working on. So like when exactly are you going to spend time researching new systems and for what reason? You're going to research them when you have that need and you're trying to find something to fit it. But other than that, you're not going to do that. So those are the two things that I see the most where leaders struggle a lot around like, I'm not sure, what am I supposed to do in this instance? Or is there a tool or product or service that does X, Y, and Z? And I would say don't feel bad. Like one of the things that I did is that I started to build out playbooks, and the playbooks are like to help people kind of think through like new concepts and build a plan through the playbook, like through the learning to do something with it later. So I wanted people to no longer feel like I don't know how to do that and then go, oh my gosh, like there's something wrong with me. It's like you don't know, and there are like thousands of other people who don't know, and they just sit up and smile and nod, right?
Yeah.
So like take it into your own hands and figure out a way to move to the next level. and be okay with not knowing what you don't know. And that's fine.
Yeah. The strategy piece is really interesting to me because I think you hit on something that is really critical, and that is it's hard to imagine something that you just don't know,
Mhm.
right? And so if I've always worked at a smaller company and all of a sudden I'm at a hyperscaler and I'm trying to figure out what does this look like when my team goes from, right, half a dozen people to 3 or 4 figures, and what does that mean and how do I deal with that? Maybe I've never had to even think about outsourcing, for instance, and that might be a big part of that strategy. But if I have no experience with that, I'm not going to know where to start. And believe you me, even if you do think of it, like there are thousands of outsourcers, and how do you sift through that? And then it's
Yeah.
much like this tool selection piece as well, trying to understand all of the tools and not just what can they do, but how do they fit within my business? How do they meet my needs both today and 3 years from now? Will they, if I'm going through that growth mode, will they be able to scale with me? Or am I going to pick something that fits me right now, but a year down the road, all of a sudden doesn't support my needs? That's really hard to think through and understand if you're not doing that kind of work on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, so go back to my 20 some odd year old days where my boss used to criticize me for not being strategic. And at the time, it made me feel like I was doing something so wrong. But like me at this age now, if someone had told me back, if I had known what I know now, like, oh, you're not thinking strategically. First of all, I'm 25 years old. Let's start there. I don't know what your vision is because you don't know what your vision is. I've never
Mm,
seen what you're talking about. So I can't bring to life something that lives in your head that you haven't shown me. And that's the limitation of my limited time in this space. I've been doing this work for 6 years, but I was doing it as an analyst. You hired me as a manager. There's a learning gap there. But I
yeah,
didn't know to say that. I just would be like, how do I become more strategic? You know what makes you strategic? Experience. That's what makes you strategic. And then when it comes to like the conversation that you just had about the BPO, I mean, I went through that before I learned it, but then I built playbooks. It's like, okay, here's the
yeah.
BPO for the playbook for finding a BPO and then for
Mhm.
managing a BPO because at one of the companies I worked for, they had a long-term BPO who would send quality calls, which I thought was insane, by the way. They would send 2 quality calls. They would choose the calls, quality assure them and send them over. No wonder quality is always 100%. But the best part about the quality it was just I was like, "This is not real." The best part about the calls that they would send over, like, nobody was listening to them until I was, in the seat, and I'm like, "Let me listen." I listened to the call. A couple of them were just hangups. So, letting a BPO.
No. Oh,
Yeah. I
no.
mean, listen, letting a BPO handle your quality is insane. If they're the ones handling the contacts, that's a no. Letting them tell you how many people you need, that's a no. Go into it with your own training. Give them a copy to implement because if you let them build it and then you decide to leave them, guess what you got to do? Start all over again. Like these are
Yeah,
things that to me are like, well, duh. But I mean, it's not duh. These are mistakes that, I've seen come up and or even with the contracts, like a lot of times, people don't understand how many options there are on how you can pay. You don't have to always have a one FTE or a dedicated FTE. You can share resources. You can do per contact. There's so many different ways to do the things that you need to do. Like, let's explore what that looks like. Don't force yourself into this, 2 or 3 year contract with someone who's sweet talking you. go into it with your requirements and understanding. And if you don't know what those requirements are, I'm sure I got a blog on it. I got a blog on everything. Like, like there's something there. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's a way for you to think ahead and go into it informed. And I don't think I'm the most vendor friendly person, which is weird because I guess technically I could be a vendor, but I'm not a vendor friendly person. I go into any conversation knowing exactly what I want. And I don't care if you're going to show me a unicorn, and because I'm like, that's cool. I like the unicorn. That's cute. But I want a pony, My Little Pony style pony. That's what I'm good with. I don't need the unicorn. So I don't care. You can keep that. Do you have ponies? And a lot of times what you'll find is they try to sell you the unicorn because they don't have any ponies, right? But you get razzled and dazzled by this beautiful unicorn and you get it in and it's still not giving what you need. And guess what? You're now under contract.
I feel like throughout this conversation, you've made it sound like you were alive in the Stone Age, and I know that's not true. So I just want everyone to know that this is not like Betty White that I'm talking to. Like, if you are watching this and not just listening to this, Ty makes it sound like she's Betty White in the Golden Girls.
I love the Golden
That
Girls, by the way.
that I do too, but that's not you. I just want
No,
everyone to know that
but
that is not you.
you know why I own the fact that I started at a different time, that I know how to function and operate in today's world. But I definitely started at a different time because sometimes I'll go to events and when I'm talking to people, I'm like, they haven't seen a lot. But a lot of it comes from, like I remember one lady I worked with, she said that her boss was the director and had 2 years experience before she was the director. And I'm going, no wonder. Like this is
Hmm.
why the struggle is real. So when I talk about the olden days, like I say that to be funny, honestly, but like a lot of people don't remember when there were just phones, when chat
Yeah.
was new, when we were trying to handle email using Outlook. And, like those are all the growing pains that I went through, which is why I understand today's technology in a different way because I knew what it was like to have to do those things without the help, which is why we're really good at rolling them out.
I'm about to sound like a crusty old person, but when you can say, back in my day, it's because you've earned it, right? We've seen some things. We've got some scars that we've got some battle stories, and there is something to be said for that experience. And I think too, as we go through these new tools, we know that everybody's talking about AI and how AI is going to eliminate jobs across the board. And don't get me wrong, there are 100% is going to be impact to certain jobs. But we heard the same thing about chat. We heard the same thing about IVRs. Like we've been hearing about all the jobs that are going to disappear within the industry because of these various technologies that have been introduced. And what has happened is there is currently just as much demand for people in support and customer service as there ever has been. And these are just tools that help them do their job more efficiently to deliver better experiences. And I think that's what we all want, those of us that are in the trenches. So don't worry, there will still be people. I promise.
There's two things I want to add to that. There's a show I used to watch called Vampire Diaries. And I love Vampire Diaries. Now my niece watches it, so sometimes we like share stories. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. So in the show, they would always introduce like these new, um, characters who had these superpowers that were so intimidating that it was like, oh no, this is going to be the end. We don't know what to do. Give it 3 or 4 episodes, that person is so much less scary because now you understand that they also can't go into the sun or whatever it is. I'm saying that to say that, you know, in this world we get these new things that are introduced and it's like, "Oh my gosh." And then you realize, well, actually it's not that scary because like you said, there's always going to be a need and a desire for people. You think about how the people piece, although AI is the buzz now, I think the next buzz is going to be we have real human reps because people are going to get
Yeah.
tired of certain things. It's just how it goes. There's ebbs and flows to everything. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ty, thank you so much for joining me on Next in Queue. I want to reiterate, if you have not connected with Ty, do so. Go down to the show notes, click that link, tell her I sent you. And thank you. Thank you so much for joining.
you are welcome. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Next in Queue is produced by me, Rob Dwyer. Theme music is courtesy of Big Red Horse. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with at least one person. Word of mouth is the best way for people to discover new content. And thanks for listening.